Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 7, episode 18. My name is Adeel, and I have Misophonia. This week I'm talking to Victoria, a textile historian and lecturer currently based in Edinburgh. We talk about her childhood experiences being triggered at an early age, with things like clocks ticking and water sounds. We talk about the challenges of being a lecturer and how she copes with misophonia in the classroom setting. She actually asks me a lot of questions about my background and experiences too, so you kind of get a 2-for-1 deal here. It was great to dive into my background a bit and talk about what we have in common between our reactions and coping methods. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach me by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, please do head over and leave a quick review or rating wherever you listen to this show, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever. It really helps drive us up in the algorithms and reach more listeners. Of course, a couple of my usual announcements. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing to the show, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. Also, reminder that the book Sounds Like Misophonia, a self-help guide, just came out through Bloomsbury, and it's by Dr. Jane Gregory and I, and you can find it anywhere around the world, any bookstores, order it, or pick it up at your local bookstore. This episode is also sponsored by the personal journaling app Basel, B-A-S-A-L. Basel was developed by me and provides AI-powered insights into your journal entries and guides you with new writing prompts based on those insights. You can even explore many different therapy approaches or modalities and philosophies. It's all available on iOS or Android. Check the show notes or go to hellobasel.com. Just a heads up, there was some audio issues, I think, with the microphone that Victoria was using, so you might hear some clicking and some volume changes that might make it hard to listen to some parts, but hopefully overall it works for you, and apologies in advance. All right, now here's my conversation with Victoria. Victoria, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, no, of course. You want to tell folks kind of roughly where you are?
Indeed. So my name is Victoria. I'm originally from Spain, but I live in the UK. I'm a lecturer and I am misophonic, and I'm here to talk about my experiences and my trauma. No. Just my misophonic trauma. No, just kidding.
Yeah. So you actually, What do we? Why don't we start with maybe what you're doing? So you're a lecturer. Do you want to talk a little bit about where you're teaching? And I'm particularly curious, I guess. Classrooms are or lecture halls are not the best place for misophones.
No, and that's, I think, not so much lectures, because students shouldn't eat in the classroom, but when you go to the canteen and then you sit side by side by a certain student that is eating a soup and is sorbing or gulping very noisily, that can be a bit challenging. So what I do, I'm a textile historian, and I study textile trade in the 18th and 19th centuries, and I teach at the University Arts London, and I'm a researcher as well at the University of Edinburgh. That's what I do.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All over the place. So I guess do you want to talk about maybe going back?
By the way, I heard about your podcast, the BBC interview that was, right. I think it was a program based on misophonia, and that was super interesting and fascinating, and that's how I encountered this podcast.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm always curious how people find out about it. And you're right. There was we recorded that. Oh man, it was actually months ago in like May or June, or maybe even earlier. And then, it was around May or June. And then I think it was some food show, and they were doing a feature on the food supply chain. I think that's what it was. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Dr. Jane
yeah.
Gregory and I were on with another young lady, and yeah, I was really happy with how it turned out, and I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, there was
Um,
something really curious that it happens to me too, and I think it was one of the participants. She was discussing that she's got a cat, and of course, when the cats choose, that's fine, that's not a problem. But of course, when anybody else does it too, then it becomes terrible, and that's what happens to me too. Because my cat, he's sick, and when he eats, I'm so happy, and I love to hear him eating, and actually, I love to hearing him eating, like chewing. And my partner, he's always like, "Oh, but how come? Like he just does the same noise, but it's different because if he eats, that means that he's healthy." I don't know. Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's all about context, and if it's related to kind of the fear triggers in the brain. I mean, it's not a misophonia is not a response to the frequencies that are
No.
involved. It's more than that, and so
Indeed. Indeed. And I heard it was also related. It was also related to like some why's or another to childhood and or childhood traumas, but I'm not sure if that's true. And why is that? Got
yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I hadn't put together until I started doing this podcast. And then every episode, I don't mean every episode, but a heck of a lot of episodes where there was some kind of a chronic childhood experience, a negative childhood experience, whether that was, stuff in the home or abuse
Mm.
or death in the family or
Oh God,
just
that got deep,
walking on
very deep.
eggshells. Yeah, or I've had two people come on whose mothers were diagnosed with severe schizophrenia at a
Oh,
at when they were young children, had to
oh
be taken away. Yeah, that comes up a lot as a common theme, or angry parent, alcoholic parent.
God,
So,
wow,
yeah, I mean, the brain at that age, I think, here I am, speculating on my soapbox, but like at that age, you don't know how the child's going to react. The child doesn't really know, and they haven't completely
of
separated from the
course,
parent, and so, I think there needs to be a lot more research into like how can we predict or treat these deep reactions in the child's brain differently, uh, for different kinds of experiences. So some people won't have misophonic reaction, but I feel like in many cases it comes up in other ways on the mental health of the child as they're growing up.
yeah.
So,
And I wonder if it's also cultural, because of course there are cultures where
hmm
chewing with your mouth open is not so much of a thing. And
yeah.
like, what's the rate of misophonics in those cultures? Is it the same? Is it smaller? That would be also an interesting
Yeah.
um, study to conduct.
Well, I think if misophonia turns out to be something where your body is not maybe is not defective, but is actually somehow the child's brain is has learned misophonia as a way to warn you of some phantom danger. If in certain cultures it's embedded in you from a young age that eating with your mouth open is not indicative of danger, maybe that's why it wouldn't be
Mm.
as prevalent in another culture. Totally needs research. I'm just talking, but
How do
fascinating.
you
Yeah.
do you expose yourself to those noises and to get used to, or do you just
No, yeah,
no accept yourself and
exposure
your
therapy is, yeah, I wouldn't I don't know if anybody recommend. I'm sure somebody does, but uh, it's generally not recommended to just kind of jump into trying to get used to noises. Um, that's kind of exposure therapy, and that's
yeah
usually will make things worse.
yeah I
But
agree.
so how about you? Like, how's your childhood? Do you remember when this started for you?
So I think it started as I mean from my own um, memories. I think 5 years old, perhaps earlier, and it was not only when my mom chewed, but also when perhaps I was most and foremost the tick-tock of the clocks around the house. Especially when I went to bed, I couldn't hear one. If I heard one, I just had to remove the batteries or hide it
Yeah.
somewhere, like very, very far away that I couldn't hear it. Because yeah, or the noise of the water, the toilet, that was also something that
Mm.
the dropping, like hearing like dropping a, that was, if I was in bed and also the toilet was in front of my bedroom, if I heard any droppings, I just went crazy, I just went mad. And I had to, even when I had the bath, and I had to leave the bathroom before the the bathtub, the drain, the
Mm-hmm.
bathtub, the drain has started working, because that was, for whatever reason, my mom has told me, I don't remember that, but she said I got like an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Hearing the
it
drain,
was also,
hearing
yeah,
water
hearing the
move.
drain, hearing water move. Apparently as well with ambulances, but that's
Mm.
fair enough. I suppose any child can have that reaction, but I started screaming because, well, yeah, I feared the ambulances. But again, that might not be related to the misophonia. That might just be that ambulances are very, very noisy. And of course, it would scare any child.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. This is fascinating. Yeah. A lot of people are, yeah, water like gulping in silence. I mean, that's definitely one of my triggers. That's funny.
Is
I think
it?
it's the first time I've, yeah, for me. It's not the only one. I mean, just sometimes just hearing water pouring into a glass, people have said that's a trigger.
Oh,
Um,
oh. Any water,
yeah.
draining, any form of draining, yes. Or
Mm,
water movement for whatever reason, yes. The TikToks, of course, any gulping, chewing, and I think recently, and that's something that has, when, I don't know how to say in English, when people when they talk and they do, that
yeah.
noise, because I didn't. That's been recent, and a couple of times I've heard myself doing it, and it was like, oh no, oh my god, stop it, and I
Is that I'm probably gonna bleep that out, but so I don't describe it. Is that kind of like that, that ticking sound when people begin a sentence? Are
exactly
you
like,
talking about that? Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
definitely one of mine. Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
it
No, you
has
nailed
happened,
it.
I've heard myself doing it. It was like, ah,
I mean, I wasn't
awful.
triggered when you just did it because, again, context. Like I'm talking to you, you're a Miss Phone, we get each other, so it doesn't trigger me. But I totally know
Oh,
what you're talking about.
yeah. But especially as well as when I'm giving any lecture, any seminar to my students, I have
Mm,
to be very careful, because if I do it, I can't stop focusing on that, and then I just disconnect from what I have to say, and instead
yeah.
focus on the noises that I'm making, or the noises that I might be perceiving whilst I'm delivering the lecture. Because, oh, this is the other thing, the pens, tick, 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 tick.
Oh yeah, yeah. Pen
When you're,
switching, classic.
oh, yeah, I've sometimes been in exam with, other students like, can you please just stop it? And they look at me as like, oh, you're, what kind of Nazi you are? It's just like, no,
Right.
please just stop it. Because I cannot finish my exam if you keep on doing that. Yeah.
Let's stay in that classroom for a second. I'm just curious, like what have you been in situations where I'm fascinated by that moment where you're kind of you heard your own clicking and your mind gets distracted. Like, do you remember any situations where that happening, and how do you get back to um the lecture?
Oh, it happens a few, like,
Happens a lot.
quite, not a lot,
Okay.
but it can happen. And I suppose it's just as anything. When you're lecturing, you're very much acting. So
Mm,
at some point, you have to think, oh, stop being yourself and go back to the um, lecturer persona, and uh, yeah, just try to disconnect from yourself, basically. And there have been days when I'm really like, I've had bad morning, or I've received some bad news, and I'm exhausted and sad and mad, and then you just go into the classroom, you put this mask on, and then you leave, and actually you feel good. It's strange. Gives you
Mm.
a strange high. Um, yeah, it is
Well,
interesting.
so is it almost sometimes if you get through a lecture, that triggers, um, you just feel like it's, I don't know,
It has
a
to,
coping
like, I
method to whatever.
shut.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah, it is a coping mechanism, and it shuts everything else in the brain. You
Hmm.
shut it down, and you have to focus on what you have to focus on. Of course, on you have to hide as well, or your insecurities, because you have to appear confident, organized, even if you're not, even if
Right.
you're, feeling terribly weak or terribly. I've had an ex-lecturer of mine who's now a friend, and I loved her. I mean, I loved her the way she lectured, and she said, well, every time I finished a class up until now, and she was about 50 years old, she said, I want to cry. I always want to cry because I feel incredibly
Hmm.
nervous, and that doesn't go away. And that's probably true because we don't get, we're not there for we haven't been prepared to deliver lectures. Have been prepared to do the research, to gather data, acquire knowledge, but not necessarily on presenting yourself in front of sometimes hundreds of people, and that you just have to get on with it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. No, that's yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I'm sure if you get triggered though, that can totally ruin that equilibrium.
indeed, indeed, absolutely. Yeah, no, that doesn't hasn't been much of a problem. I think it's more when I'm, yeah, in the canteen, and perhaps if I'm sat to like close to a student, and you cannot just tell them, like, eat with your mouth shut, or I have to leave in my case, because then, yeah, you can, you don't want to appear as who you are. You just want to retain those that mask, or that persona, rather than.
Have you? Has it always? Yeah. Has that always worked? Has there ever been a situation where you had to tell a student like about misophonia, or just have to tell them I can't do this right now. Maybe my nervous system is back.
Thankfully, not yet.
Yeah.
It may happen, but there have been times that has happened a couple of times. Yes, that I've had a student that was opening a chocolate bar or a candy, and the noise that has really bothered me. Oh, sorry, the dog.
No, it's okay.
And that isn't usually a noise that really bothers me, but for some reason, yes, when I'm in the classroom, it does. Perhaps just because you can hear it very, very well, and I it yeah, that I cannot stand. Or even if a student eats in the classroom, but that I say it up front, like, eating is not allowed, or
Yeah.
try, unless it is a very, very big lecture room, when in which case I know that I'm not going to hear it, that's fine. But if I know that I'm going to hear it, it is a small seminar of 10 to 15 students, then eating is not allowed. No,
Right.
not
No, that's
possible.
great. I've heard of other teachers, lecturers mention at the beginning, like, be explicit about the fact that don't eat in my class.
Yeah, but I
And
think, you know what? I think that's very cultural, in the sense that in the
yeah.
US, a lot of people, like, it's okay to eat
Hmm.
during a class, like in a class, in a class, in the classroom, or during a seminar, or whatever. But it's not so much the case in the UK, or in Europe. I don't know why. But yeah, it is, again, a cultural difference.
Hmm. Hmm. So going back to yeah, I mean, going back to childhood, yeah, yeah, at night, especially, it sounded like you're very sensitive to, yeah, clocks ticking or water. Was around that evening time, were did you feel like you were kind of like, I don't know, exhausted mentally for any
Oh,
reason, often?
yes, indeed. And I had a whole ritual before going to bed, which
Uh,
sometimes I thought that I was OCD, but it was like that ritual was only noise related. So, and it was, yeah, removing all the clocks that I had in my bedroom,
oh, did you mean
making
ritual?
sure,
Sorry,
yeah, ritual.
so
Sorry.
okay.
What did I, sorry, didn't
It sounded
pronounce
like
it.
retool, but
Oh,
I just
no,
it's
ritual. Sorry.
yeah. I just want to make sure the listeners knew because it's a very fascinating part of, yeah. Sounds like of your experience.
Yeah, no, ritual of hiding all the clocks and making sure the
Hmm.
tab was properly closed. And yeah, sorry, there's a bit of noise in the background. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
so it
sorry.
was the ritual yeah, so I totally get that. Yeah, to make things quiet. I'm also curious if just kind of like your mental state, like in in the evenings, was it just kind of tense here in your house at all, or was it just totally fine and happy
No,
childhood?
it was tense. It was tense,
Okay.
I think. I mean, not that it was tense environment. I
Mm-hmm.
was tense because of the noises. And
Mm,
I,
gotcha.
yeah, no, I don't, I mean, I didn't I didn't have any tension in my family, if that's the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, that was
That
basically the
was
question.
fine. Yeah, no,
Sorry, yeah.
no, no. I think it was just, if anything, my mom is a single mom, and she worked usually
Mm,
until quite late in the
mm-hmm.
evening, and I was always
Mm-hmm.
very expectant to see her. So maybe there was that. There was sometimes childhood disappointment because she was. I mean, she's now retired, and she was a journalist, and but
Mm-hmm.
then she couldn't work from home. So if she had to finish writing something, she had to finish from the newspaper's offices, or if she had to attend a press conference or whatever. So there was that expectancy. So
Margaret
that
Thatcher's
was
yapping about something that she had to be right on top of it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Um, but there wasn't any other tension that I can
Gotcha.
recall.
Do you have brothers and sisters too?
I have two half sisters.
Oh,
So they
gotcha.
are daughters of my father, not my mother. Yeah,
Gotcha.
but
Did you have to
I grew up with my mom and my grandparents. So
exclusively? You weren't like going back and forth or anything?
no, no,
Okay.
no. That's something that luckily I think my mom saved me from, because that would have been very traumatic. Because at the moment, since I live in almost three countries, in the sense that I work in the UK, but I'm originally from Spain, and then my partner is in Italy, so I'm everywhere, all over the place, and I
Mm.
cannot imagine if I had to travel, even if it's just nationally, um, between two houses, that would have been awful. So
Yeah.
um, luckily, I didn't. No, I didn't have to deal with that.
Okay. Yeah. So he wasn't like down the street and you can just split time. It would have been
No,
quite a
no, no,
massive.
no. It would, yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been, and it is true that I don't have the best relationship with my father. Um,
Mm.
so again, I'm lucky. I think that she um, didn't expose me to that, to him.
Gotcha. I mean, was he um not a nice man kind of thing, or
Indeed, yeah.
yeah.
I think. I mean, he's engineer in the military and
Mm.
very, very, very strict. Zero. I think he could be. He's emotionally disabled, so he doesn't have empathy. And as a child, you don't want to be around with somebody who doesn't have empathy, because they
Yeah.
cannot.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
they don't have emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But
And
that's
how about
also the reason why I think that misophonia might there might be some relationship with trauma, and it kind
Hmm.
of makes sense. Um, but on the other hand, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Have you ever always been misophonic in the sense since you were a child?
I think it started around, yeah, I mean, probably that middle. Well, I know it. At least I became more aware of it. Yeah, I guess around that middle school, early high school. But
Ah, quite late.
yeah, but I know that having talking to I haven't speaking I'm not talking proper English, but having discussed it, with my my therapist and going back to childhood memories, I can totally remember times when I was 4 or 5 and being in situations where I've had to read like religious texts and be very careful about how I made certain sounds, as I'm reading them
Mm,
because it was not my first
yeah,
language,
yeah.
and kind of being chastised if I kind of didn't, pronounce things the right way. And so I have, we're starting to connect those dots, and I feel like that awareness to sounds started quite early.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
That's interesting.
there's also the idea of epigenetics where things get transferred not in right in your genes, but
From the
across
environment.
generations. Yeah, yeah.
True,
It's like,
true.
and so, again, there needs to be a lot of research, but yeah, there's
I
yeah, many ways.
do
That's why I
you
kind of
do you,
wanted to hear a little bit about your, I wanted to hear a little bit about your parents just to kind of
of
set the scene.
course. Do you know of other relatives who are
No,
misophonic? No?
not my own, not my own. No. How about
Oh,
yourself? There's definitely some people where it's very prevalent, but others not so
really?
much. Yeah.
All right. No, I mean the only relative who's also misophonic is my uncle's wife, she's not
Not
related
blood. Yeah.
to me. So no, not blood related. So in her case, it's just coincidence, really. That's also what I was wondering if there was any genetic component, but
The
apparently
current
not.
thinking, not like in the genes, but epigenetics is where, yeah, the environment could basically affect
Yeah,
how your genes are expressed into what you actually are.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the idea of like making some genes dormant versus not.
Mhm,
Um, so yeah,
mhm.
there is the idea of yeah, and so um, basically epigenetics refers to, and I'm not a scientist of that or a biologist, but epigenetics refers to these markers. Think of it like I don't know, like a post-it note on your DNA to tell it to turn a switch on and off to kind of
Yeah, no, no.
express that gene or not. So
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, no, I just got confused, but yes, absolutely, I understand what you mean.
so I think, yeah, growing up, like, how about in school? I know you mentioned like exams were kind of tough in certain situations, but like, did you? Let's talk about maybe, yeah, school and friends. Like, did friends start to notice? How was it like growing
I
up?
think yes, they just thought I was very weird.
Hmm.
Precisely because it was say if I was sad, close to somebody that was playing with their pens, I had to tell them because it was, I was just my anxiety was just escalating. But yeah, I think I was just weird in that sense,
Yeah.
which didn't always help because of course then I was bullied for it. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily for being misophonic, but just you get a label and then that's it. Uh,
Hmm.
yes.
Where did you grow up again? Sorry, did you grow up in England or Spain or?
No, no, in Spain. I grew up in
Okay.
Spain.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, and I'm not sure about you, what about when people, because this is not misophonia per se. I think, again, it's close, more visual related, although sometimes they're like, you can start hearing all the little noises, and that's when people move their leg all the time, or when they do, certain movements, especially like when they're nervous and they just start moving the leg. No?
Yeah. No, I think you're just
Yeah.
weird. No, no, you're totally right. This is called it's called misokinesia. So
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
I've got that
so
too.
visual, yeah, no, you're this is totally normal. I mean, normal for people like us, but yeah, misokinesia, misokinesiia. I mean, the kinesia part is literally about movement, and so
Mm.
it's very much very much a thing. Like I would definitely many people get triggered just by seeing chewing or like certain foot movements.
But
Like
is so
people have
there's
come on and
something.
talked about curling their toes, like this watching their parents curl their toes or shake their
Oh,
legs.
oh,
Yeah, no, this is very common.
oh dear. The other thing that happened in a classroom, in the context of the classroom, but I was not the lecturer. I attended a course of like Catalan, and there was a poor man who was taking, I think he might have been taking some kind of antidepressants, and that made him very, very sleepy. So
Mm,
sometimes during the the, the, the class, he would just fall asleep and start snoring,
mm,
and that would drive me crazy because I could hear him. It was not a, you know, it was more deep breathing,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and that was awful because I couldn't concentrate. I was just thinking, oh, please wake up, or I'll wake you up. Just stop breathing,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, I'll choke you. Wake up, or I'll choke you. You choose. But
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, snoring and loud breathing are usually not my triggers, but in that environment, totally would be. I mean, it's. I wouldn't be able to think about anything else in kind of a lecture hall where everything else is quiet. Um, yeah.
mm,
Well, yeah, no, that's
what are
yeah.
your biggest triggers?
Mine are I
Yeah,
mean, mine are like throat clearing, coughing, sniffling, especially that also
coughing.
that's
No.
that's
Oh, hold on. Yeah, no, go, continue, continue.
I was gonna say, and this gets into it's hard to describe, but I'm sure you'll probably get it. But you know that sound when people have eaten some food or drank something, but the food hasn't completely. It's kind of just settled in their throat, and they're starting to and then try to talk, and then trying to. It sounds like they just um, poured some sand in their mouth, and so it's got that you can basically
Yeah,
hear the food kind of you know rolling around
fair.
in their throat.
Yeah, I think so, but it doesn't. I don't think that bothers.
Okay.
I haven't picked up on it much, which means it doesn't really bother me because otherwise I
Okay.
would have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the coughing. Go back to the coughing because I do. I want to ask you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, many kinds of coughing, especially if it's like just kind of like chronic, like if it just kind of keeps going. Um, I guess if somebody is like clearly sick and I know the reason for, I know the context, and I know that, after a couple days or whatever, it's going to be gone. It's less of a problem. But if it's kind of like,
Mm,
I call it, sometimes I call it, well, at an extreme level, I sometimes call it kind of casual coughing, like if you're in a bar or something, and then if somebody just decides to probably have a little tickle in their throat, but they decide to make a big deal and cough it out.
okay.
That kind
So
of
then
bothers me. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I do have it too, because again, with my mom, that happens to me a lot. Like she starts coughing and then she goes like, and
yeah,
I just tell her, please stop it.
you didn't need
Don't
to.
make
Yeah,
it
no, you didn't need to go all that. You don't need to go
exactly.
that far.
And now that makes me think that maybe actually my grandfather was also misophonic because my grandmother, every time she sneezed more than once. And when he got to the third sneeze, my grandfather was like, "Stop it!"
Out the door. He's like in his car going to. Yeah.
So maybe he was also misophonic. I just didn't have. But
Mm-hmm.
this is the other thing. He sometimes he had a fake teeth. Is that how you call it? Like the
Dentures. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
dentures. Yeah, he had a denture, and he would sometimes play with it. Not play, as in
No,
just
no.
bring it down and move it, and that was awful too. So maybe he was not a misophonic. I don't think he would do that otherwise.
Well,
If he was.
yeah. I mean, we don't usually get triggered by our own sounds. So maybe he just
But
didn't
he
realize
would
it.
be aware. He would be aware of him doing it the same way that
Mm.
I am aware when I do the.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Talk to me about what were some acts of? Do you remember some acts of bullying? Was it teasing that kids would do, or would they try to mimic the sound too and try to kind of get you riled up?
Mm, not really. I think they didn't know it was about the noises.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't make that explicit. Or maybe they didn't pick up that it was, it was connected to the noises. They just thought that I was weird and I didn't like people that played with their pens, which of
Yeah.
course in a school, in the context of a school, a lot of people does. Um, or sometimes yes, chewing with their mouths open. I don't think they put two and two together. Thankfully, they just thought I was weird, and for that reason, they they bullied me. And well, and also I think that see, I did it, and I was
I know.
glad. I
I
was
was
like,
just gonna say. I
okay,
wonder if she's gonna
yeah,
pick on that,
I
pick
did,
that
I
up. But
did.
yeah, you did.
um, Mm, no, I think it was also because I went to my school was rather conservative, and the fact that I was the daughter of a single mom that didn't that shocked them. And
Mm.
yeah, and
Oh,
that
like
was
conservative is in like politically conservative, and
yes, yes, because
here's this girl coming from a, you know,
exactly a
yeah,
strange
yeah,
family. Like she lives with her
right,
mom, with her grandparents. What's that?
yeah, yeah, gotcha.
And
Okay,
children don't like different children.
yeah,
So mm,
yeah. Um, and what were your obviously at that point? I know you're much younger than me, so I don't know at that age if there was like if you knew what the name misophonia was, but I'm just curious, kind of what were
no,
your coping methods around that time?
my coping method.
Like earbuds or anything, or did you just kind of like, try to
With
leave
the
the
bullying.
situation?
Oh, I lived the situation. I had to leave the situation, and I
Yeah.
think journaling was a big one. I loved journaling.
Oh
That
yeah.
helped me a lot because then I had someone to whom I could talk, and I could say that I could just say everything I wanted to, because of course that
Mm-hmm.
person wasn't just it was a journal. It was it
Yeah.
was not a person. So journaling. And I
The
think there was a
ritual at night,
point,
but
the
yeah.
ritual, of course. And I got to the point that I just said, you know what? If I'm weird, I love being weird. It's like, fuck it. And in that moment, since they couldn't hurt me anymore, because it's like, I like it. I don't want to be like you. I like the way I am. And that was a massive change because they just they didn't have any power over me anymore. And that was something I'm extremely proud of myself because that happened over a summer. I thought, no, this is not going to happen anymore. This is who I am. That's it. And
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
part
I
of
mean,
mhm.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say part of a lot of okay, here I'm being a psychologist again, but part of a lot of I think childhood to adult issues are come down to kind of authenticity and whether you can feel that you're being authentic, and if you can't, there's this tension that sometimes is expressed as um, a threat. And so I
Mm,
love that you were able to kind of like, over the course of one summer, just decide to, hey, I'm going to be authentic, and I don't really care if you don't get me or
yeah,
not.
yeah. I don't even know how I did it, to be honest, but I did it somehow. And
Yeah.
one question I wanted to ask you: do you get uh, like stomach problems, as in like you get inflammation when you hear constant chewing? I'm just saying it because I don't live with my mom now, of course, because I live in the UK. But when I come to I come to visit, I just get sick.
Did you say stomach problems?
Yes, stomach problems. Like
Yeah, this is interesting because I've always had, I want to say like every day, but yeah, I mean, I I've had definitely. It's not super predictable, but I definitely. I mean, I joke about this with my family and friends sometimes because I've had memorable situations where I basically pooped my pants like in childhood,
Oh,
and so I just said that on the air and it's being recorded for eternity, but but at least like yeah, stomach aches, and
yeah.
in some cases like I couldn't I couldn't hold things hold things
Oh,
together completely. So but I don't know. I just considered it maybe lactose intolerance or something
mm,
else. But it there are definitely situations when I'm stressed out. And it's not all the time, but it does manifest itself as kind of stomach issues.
yeah, yeah. And perhaps because of the cortisol goes up, bang, and then it
Hmm.
goes straight into your stomach, and then you get inflamed. Because I mean, to me, it's obvious. Because I mean, I love my mom, but when I'm around her and I hear her chewing her tongue, I just yeah get sick. My yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, that's interesting. Again, needs to be more research into that. But yeah, you're not alone.
Mm.
And yeah, one of my neighbors who also has misophonia. I mean, he yeah
Oh,
recently got
really?
he got diagnosed with many issues related to stomach issues, which explain a lot of stuff going back to childhood
Yeah.
with stomach issues. So yeah, that's really interesting that you mentioned that. Um, so I'm gonna ask everybody else who comes on if they poop their pants. So,
No, I mean in my case it wasn't that bad. It's just
I'll hear a hang
um,
up. Oh, yeah. No one's gonna want to talk to me anymore. No, yeah, that's interesting. Well, so then, yeah, so I guess kind of chronologically, like that kind of takes us to, we talked about school a bit, but yeah, I guess when you got out into the world, like how was, did you notice things change? Like you're able to kind of maybe live on your own. How was navigating like adult life and relationships and things like that?
well, it's been simple in the sense that if I haven't, I've never had a partner. I haven't been able to be with somebody that chews with their mouth open. That's just like, no, that's
Hmm.
impossible. Um, so I'm not sure if that means that I've coped. I've just, I've been very strict or,
Yeah,
um, so that's and again that's been unconscious. It's just it's just bothers you, and it's like no, I can't be around you. I don't mind how much like how beautiful you are, how handsome, how attractive you are. No, just no. Um.
right.
So, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, like a lot of people, I feel like when left the cocoon of the home, and I have had a little bit more agency as to kind of like where I lived and how I spent my time. Yeah, I mean, I guess coming out of college and I moved to a new city to take a job, so I was kind of like living by myself and
Mm-hmm.
kind of generally was able to kind of um, you know, spend time alone if I needed to. So I didn't notice it being a
Mm.
big problem. It wasn't until yeah, it wasn't until later than when I had jobs where I was starting to be in those open office environments a bit more. When I
Yeah.
started and I know my jobs got a little bit more senior and more intense. That was a kind of a collision course for misophonia because then I start to really know I had to focus and I start to really notice like things like my boss like having prolonged sips of his diet coke and um, things like that, and then it really spiraled at that point. So
And what do you do in those instances?
what do I do with those? So luckily, so I'm in tech, so it's a little bit less formal. And yeah, I could kind of go outside for a walk or something, or just generally kind of move around. Again, at that point, I didn't really know what misophonia was.
Until
Or I think
when?
I had just, or maybe I had recently seen the term, but it hadn't fully kind of like clicked. It seemed like, oh, I
Mm,
have a common idiosyncrasy with
mm,
maybe some other people and some fringe things. So Because I think I read an article around 2008 or 2000, yeah, around that time, and that's kind of around when I was in these. Yeah, I was definitely. I mean, I recognized the symptoms to the point where I could identify with the article. So obviously, I had kind of like
Yeah.
experienced it, but yeah, I remember I had a job where I was working out of my boss's basement, and so if people were there weren't a lot of people there, but if they're making sounds, then I started to notice it. And I remember there were some
God.
very quite stressful days, and that's interesting because that is a job where I had basically a panic attack at some point and had to go to the doctor. And
Oh
so I
God.
don't know if it was misophonia related, but I feel like my nervous system was probably um, burnt
Collapsed.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh God. That's
So.
awful.
But yeah, but until then, things were okay. But they did it kind of gradually get worse as kind of I got, more deeper into my adult life.
Sure. One question, putting a name to it, has it helped you or has it perhaps even worsened? Because then it's like, oh, I've got this thing, I've got to cure it. Whereas before it was just, oh, this is the way I am.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's like what the kind of the arc that a lot of people share is they find out what it is and then they're like, oh God, this is amazing. I know what it is, and then they're on the internet all night trying to research it, and then maybe there's a then you're kind of like bombarded with all these coping methods, and you try them all out, and things seem okay maybe for a few days, but then you realize this is a real thing, and there's no panacea. There's no cure.
Mm.
So it's good that it kind of puts a name to it, and you're able to kind of be more confident. Kind of like you told yourself that I am who I am. You kind of just are more confident about leaving situations or maybe telling people, but it doesn't really go away. Um, you just
Yeah,
maybe
some
have some more tools and some more awareness, and maybe you can predict that, hey, in that situation,
true.
I'm going to have this thing that I know now is called misophonia, so I better prepare
True.
myself.
But the problem, I mean, it has happened to me, is that before it was them, whereas now I'm
Mhm.
aware that it's me.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I cannot
Yes,
start blaming people. Oh, this person's just
right.
chews with their mouth open. How awful,
Yeah,
it's disgusting. And I was like, no, no, it's me. It's my problem, not theirs.
yeah,
So I'm not
yeah.
sure if
It's
it
definitely
has.
more fun to kind of like, you know, make fun of people in your head. But yeah, when it's you feel like, oh man, this is exhausting enough. Now I have to like, you know, think about how to like me kind of deal with it. Yeah, it is. I
Yeah,
try not to think about that too much.
true. Yeah. And do you have, what about like political family? Or when you start meeting the parents, the parents of your partner, or yeah, how do
Yeah,
you?
I mean, my parents are. I mean, they know what it is. They live. We don't see them super often. They do live around some. They do live around here, and so we get together sometimes. And they're definitely not the quietest. Basically, when I go to their house, at some point it becomes an acoustic nightmare. Um, and so at that point, I just have to move around or put on my earbuds or something.
I
Um,
see.
luckily, I mean, luckily, luckily, basically everyone wants quiet time for some one reason or another. We can't just kind of like, you know, no one can kind of be around each other for too long at the same time. So it is kind of normal to kind of move around. Um,
Mm, well, not bad.
and there's also often some self medication happening with the liquor cabinet with everyone around there. So
I see.
which is again another like um it's a mixed bag. It can kind of like numb things a little bit, but then it can also throw people into a more sensitive, ranty state.
Uh,
So I try to be a little bit more
what's
careful with that.
what's been your worst, like, scene when you said, like, um, when you reacted to this, you think maybe it went too far, or this was weird that I reacted to it, or do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, I don't.
Like, because of the
Um,
context, not necessarily because you were very aggressive or anything, but just because of the context where you were, and then it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said this then, or anything like that.
yeah, I'm trying to think. because having it from such a young age, I'm used to bottling it up. Um,
Ah,
I in general I generally kind of bottle up. All right, so here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily come out as a related to misophonia. Usually the misophonia has completely destroyed my nervous system and mental state, and it's usually something else annoying that I kind of like maybe will come
I
out
see.
as like I'll get upset about something else, and
I
it's
see.
just because the misophonia has kind of like destroyed me that day
I
or
see. I see. I
that
see.
evening. So it's rarely that I'll yeah, I honestly can't really remember a time when I'm like so I'm more likely to just shut down. And that
I see.
and that can cause its own problem if you're communicating with somebody
Mm,
where
of
they're
course.
expecting communication and you've shut down, then it looks like you know, then it can cause other
Yeah,
problems, right?
I see.
So,
I see. See, perhaps this is the difference in knowing that before, since I thought it wasn't necessarily me, it was that the others were, making these disgusting noises.
right.
I would say it. And
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it's been on the trains or planes, especially on planes when, you cannot just simply leave. And
Hmm.
it's hard to say, just please
Well, if you have a
stop
parachute, maybe,
chewing
but
that gum.
oh,
Stop
they should
chewing.
give all misophones parachute and oxygen tanks. So,
Totally. Should, yeah. Those, there have been many, many cases when I've said it in those instances, and then you have to share a plane with that person for a few more hours. It's very
wait, so you
weird.
have said that? You said that on a plane?
Oh yeah, on a plane, on a
Okay.
train,
Yeah.
anywhere, except
Wow.
unless I can, if I can move, I'll move. And if I know that I shouldn't now, especially now that I know that I shouldn't say it because it's not them, it's me,
Hmm.
I won't, and I'll just try to deal with it, or again, or leave the room, whatever. Or again, if I'm dealing with the students. But if I'm in a plane, if I was in a train, I've always said it because I
Yeah.
just I had to. It's just like this is
Right. Right.
sorry,
Yeah.
perhaps not the best.
Has how have the reactions to that been? How were the reactions to that? Did you ever
Usually
get into like,
looking, because sometimes you start looking, staring at the person very,
yeah,
yeah,
the glare?
just exactly the glare, and they think, oh my god, what's wrong with me, or like, are they trying to flirt with me? But you can see the other person getting very confused, and
Yeah.
and then you
The men
just,
are
like,
like, oh, she's flirting with me, and the women are like, oh, she's jealous of me, or
or, I don't know, but yeah, they're just like, what's wrong with her? Why is she looking at me that
right.
way? Um, and then it just gets to the point, because of course it goes up and up and up and higher, and the stress, um, and the moment you just try to be very nice, but inside of you you're just exploding.
Hmm.
So it's like, can you please stop chewing? And they just look at you as in, are you either someone, they just, yeah, they look back at you with hate, and they think, oh, what kind of Nazi are you?
Hmm.
But that's usually it. And most of the
Hmm.
times people have stopped, likely for me. But if they don't, then I leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I try, or I ask to have my seats changed or something like that. Yeah.
Have you
But
ever
no.
have
Oh,
you
go.
m- have you met anyone who has misophonia?
Not yet, exactly. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so this is the thing. I was telling the other day my uncle about, I was talking to my uncle and I told him, oh, I've got this interview, etc. And I told him what misophonia was, and he was the one who told me, oh, I think my wife has it, because when we
Mm.
go to the cinema, she cannot stand people eating popcorn,
Yeah.
and there are other noises that she doesn't like. But of course, maybe she knows now that she's got misophonia, and before she didn't. So that's how I found out that maybe she is, but I haven't had the
Mm.
chance to talk to her yet. So
Yeah.
no, this is also why I was so amazed by your podcast. It was like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not alone. Or when I heard there I did it again, the
Yeah, I know. I
BBC.
heard that.
Sorry,
No, no,
the
no.
BBC program, that was fantastic, and I shared that with all my relatives. I mean, not all my relatives, but my mom, my partners. Like, Dad, please listen to this. Understand me, empathize with me. Stop chewing your dog.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
was that the first time you knew it had a name?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay,
It
okay.
was, but it was the first time that I heard, like, I listened to people talking about it rather than
Yeah.
just reading about it and the
Right.
different possible explanations. But it was really good to, yeah, to see, to hear to other people's experiences and feel, I felt understood, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean,
When
that's the whole
when
point.
what when did you meet? Like, when did you first meet any other misophonic person?
Oh, yeah, for me, basically, so I found out it had a name. I don't know, around 2007, 2008, and then part of my online research, and this is like, just pre Facebook. I think, well, pretty popular Facebook, so it's kind of a little bit hard to find. But there was a Yahoo group. I don't know if you remember. You're so young, you may not even remember Yahoo,
Yeah.
probably. But I'm just kidding. But there was like Yahoo groups was before Facebook groups and Reddit. So there was a
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
group about misophonia. It was called. Um, Here's a little history lesson. It used to be called selective sound sensitivity syndrome. So
Okay.
but it didn't get misophonia was also bandied about around that time, but it wasn't until a New York Times article in 2009 or 2011 when it really became misophonia. And so I didn't, I met some people in that Yahoo group, but I
Mm.
didn't really meet anybody in real life until, that place where my boss was, um, really enjoying sipping his Diet Coke. That I bumped into. It was a small startup, and I think I think I was in the kitchen area, and I found like one of my coworkers who was also, I guess, running away from that sound, and the conference, the it came up, and I was like, dude, I know I have found out it has a name. And he's like, really? And actually, he was on the podcast like, I don't know, last year or a year ago.
Oh,
We're still friends, like years later. But yeah, I think he was kind of the first person that I met. But yeah, but it was really kind of slow since then. It wasn't really until about 2018. There was there's a misophonia convention where um, a bunch of talks were given, and misophones kind of all meet and listen to these, well, not lectures but talks, and meet up
I
over
see.
coffee or whatever. And so in 2018 there was one here locally to me in Minnesota, so I went to that, and that's when I was surrounded by hundreds of misophones. I was like, this is amazing. And
Oh
I'm
wow,
talking to people, and uh, I don't have to explain.
explain
Like,
yourself.
they already know.
Yeah.
Like, we have so many shared experiences that it's just like I'm like, we're like long lost friends, kind of. That's what it felt like. And
Hmm.
so that's why I started the podcast. I was like, this isn't just like people sharing, having a couple common idiosyncrasies. We really had a lot of shared experiences growing up. And you just mentioned the whole stomach thing. I mean,
That's
that's also
fascinating.
part of it. And so I was like, oh, we have to
Yeah.
share these stories. It can't just be Facebook groups of people ranting. We got to get deep. And so um
Yeah. So cool. Have you ever had any neurologist or talking about misophonia?
yeah, I've had neuroscience, people talk about the neuroscience. I know I've had everybody from 23andMe, the genetics company,
Because
yeah, like people in Dr. Kumar's group at Newcastle and Iowa,
I see.
who did a bunch of who've got papers on the brain science, the neuroscience of misophonia. It's right at this point, it's more like observations in fMRIs and whatnot of which parts
Mm.
of the brain get activated when. there isn't a lot of like
Yeah.
why and how,
Mm,
but no, I've
mm.
had a number of those
Or
on. Yeah.
were, as well. I see. Interesting. Yeah, I have to check those because I haven't had the opportunity to listen to all of them, but I would love
Yeah, if you're interested
to
in those, I'll be happy to.
understand more.
I can I share with you links to the ones that might be most interesting to you. So.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And perhaps last but not least, I think the connection that when we were chatting on Instagram, the between misophonia perhaps and trypophobia, and that fear of textures or dots
Oh yes.
or repetitive visual patterns. Did you have a chance to look?
I have not. I haven't.
Um,
Yeah, I now remember that.
no?
Yeah, I should look into it more because yeah, as I mentioned before, I try to keep things spontaneous, so I didn't look back at our conversation.
No, of
But yeah,
course.
you're right. I think just for the listeners, yeah, you're talking about a sensitivity to yeah, patterns, and for me, yeah, definitely there are certain like sometimes line formations, whether it's like a dried clay, on a hot,
Mm,
when I remember I was in Morocco and traveling it like years ago and taking pictures of clay in the desert that had been like dried in the sun, like very strong heat, and it just
yeah,
made these like weird cracking patterns. And I took pictures of it, and I
yeah,
can't look at those pictures. It's just really jarring to me. And sometimes cracks in the
yeah.
wall, if they follow certain patterns, I just makes me very
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. Because I do wonder sometimes if misophonia is just part of a wider
Yes.
hypersensitivity, and and there might be also visual or kinetic sensitivities that again do not get talked about because you're just focusing
Hmm.
um, on the on the noise aspect of it.
I believe so. Yeah, I've
Um,
mentioned on the podcast that I feel like in 5, 10 years, it's not going to be called misophonia. It's not going to be just known as the sound sensitivity. I think, yeah, you're right. I think there's a wider issue that's different than the um, current definition of sensory processing disorder. I think that's a bit different, but I think, yeah, I think there is something beyond just sound. And I've also mentioned sound is like it's more noticeable because it's the hardest. So I feel like it's the hardest sense to hide from. Like you can close your eyes and not look at those patterns, or
yeah,
shaking or
yeah,
whatever. You can
yeah,
obviously not eat something or touch something, but even if you block your ears, you can. There's a danger of hearing something.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. And it's more frequent,
right,
like a noise than tends to be,
right,
I'd say. The chewing.
yeah,
It's more likely that you're going to be exposed to people chewing than not necessarily certain visual
yeah.
patterns. But yeah. Hmm. Well, it was.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Victoria. I mean, we're heading. I know we had some technical difficulties and stuff, but I think we've done a good solid, at least an hour maybe here. I know we had a little, even with a little break in the middle, but yeah, this is fascinating. I mean, yeah, like I said, I'd love to link you to, I don't know, other episodes that you want to hear. But
Do please.
any other
Yes.
question? Not any. I mean, anything else you want to share with people listening, or just don't have to. I'm putting you on the spot.
No. I just think, to be honest, I think I told you that yes, I try, especially to strangers.
Mm,
I don't tell them anymore. Just shut up, like eat with your shut your mouth,
yeah.
or just throw that gum. But I have to tell, like if this is somebody I know, I keep saying it. Like there's no way I can just bottle it up as you do. Like there's no, it doesn't
Hmm.
exist because I no.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I would become very aggressive, if that anxiety has to come out one way or
Yep.
another.
Yep.
No, I mean not aggressive physically, just in the way you
Yeah.
communicate or
The glare
you make
and
noise.
all
I
that.
just have
Yeah.
to, yeah, the glare, exactly, the glare.
Right.
Yes.
Well, yeah, no, thanks.
What about
Oh, sorry. You asking what about me?
no, that, yeah, yeah. Do you cope now any differently?
Well, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, some of I mean, now that I didn't, when I started this podcast, which was only a few years ago, I didn't know what the hell I don't know what the hell a nervous system was or any of these things, but I had no idea. And so, one of the things I do is try to like, and I didn't realize it was related to maybe, um, your child's brain learning to warn you of something, of a danger that maybe doesn't exist or
Mm,
doesn't exist anymore. So, when if and when I remember, I try to just enter a situation, taking some time to calm my brain down and just let it know that, hey, you're not in danger. Like nothing is going to attack
I
you
see.
or jump on you,
I see.
and just taking steps to kind of calm that nervous system down and just remind yourself that you're
Mm,
not in danger is helps. If it's not going to take it out completely, but if it can help you not get to the most excited state, or at least help you come back down to normal a little bit more, then that's
mm.
kind of a win.
I'll try
Hmm.
it. Yeah, I'll absolutely. Do you have anxiety in general? Are you an anxious person?
It's not, no, I don't think so. It's definitely not been diagnosed, but, no, but I don't know, I'm generally regarded as pretty relaxed and upbeat and so,
Okay.
no, it's really only if I'm kind of pushed to I'm kind of like, well, that's the misophonia trait, but it kind of Jekyll and Hyde, like I'm usually relaxed, but if it's like, there's usually a certain point where I do get kind of like anxious, but it's like it takes a while to get to that
Mm,
point.
interesting. Because again, was my, as we were discussing before, just pure
Hmm.
hypothesis, personal no studies. But I thought it had also something to do with anxiety,
Is
because I do have,
mm,
uh, I yeah, I cope with anxiety, but I've got, yeah, big anxiety issues.
yeah, well, there's definitely a wide overlap, whether it's diagnosed or not, with anxiety, OCD, bipolar, ADHD. That comes up on the podcast a lot. Those
Oh,
conditions. So there's definitely um, yeah, high overlap. A lot of those comorbid conditions go along with misophonia. Well, yeah,
well,
Victoria,
thank
this is
you.
super super awesome to talk to you and yeah, talk about all this stuff. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you no, thank you so much, and thanks for doing this. I think I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if any scientist has asked you, but at the end of the day, what you're gathering is a lot of
Yep.
data about misophonia that any, qualitative data that any scientist, I think, would be super fascinated
Mm-hmm.
to use to understand more about misophonia, as you've said, not only the neurological side of things, but more the contextual, the why it happens, when
Mm-hmm.
it happens, and where, like if it has to do with culture or not. But thank you so much.
Thank you again, Victoria. Fantastic conversation, and I love sharing my story a bit more. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast, and on Twitter, X, it's Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace